Hi, my name is Lita, and I am a student at Rider. I go part time studying finance, working towards my bachelor's degree. In addition to going back to school, I also have a full time job, and I have three kids. So life gets a little hectic to say the least. But what I'm here to talk to you today about, the topic that was assigned to me, was a slippery slope. So this is a term that most of us have heard in passing. You're usually familiar with it. It's a cliche statement, and basically it's a cause and effect. So when we're describing a slippery slope, we're usually describing an event or an action or words that were spoken intentionally. But on the flip side of that, there's some unintentional consequences. And usually when we're talking about a slippery slope, we're describing a situation that's not necessarily good. It's usually a bad thing. But really what I wanted to hone in on today is the slippery slope of, what can happen at work when you say or do something that has negative consequences. And really, we're talking about is perception and branding. And perception is an idea that I'm really fascinated with, and I also really try to work hard when I'm at work on controlling what my brand is, which is how my coworkers perceive me. So I have a good story. It's actually an unfortunate story, but it's a good story to demonstrate what happens when you say something and then you can have some negative consequences because of that. So I used to work in a call center, and obviously when you work in a call center that's high volume, it can be very stressful. And customer service is supposed to be your number one focus, but it became difficult because the people that call in, they aren't always the nicest. And if they're frustrated or angry and need help, it can be difficult sometimes, and it's sometimes it gets to you. It can be hard. So that happened to a colleague of mine, Jim. He had a particularly difficult phone call. When he got off the phone, he was really angry and frustrated. So he went to the break room and he was venting to another colleague about this phone call that he just had. And he wasn't saying very nice things about the client. In fact, he was berating them and saying some pretty terrible things. Unfortunately for Jim, he wasn't alone in the break room. It wasn't just him and his friend. There was someone else there, and that other person was a resident manager, Bob. And so Bob overheard the whole conversation. And at that moment, because of the things that Jim had said, he really damaged his brand. The perception of him and Bob's point of view was negative because of the things that he said. Unfortunately for Jim, he was sort of in the heat of the moment and just saying these things. It's not that he was a bad person or a bad employee. It's just that he said the wrong thing at the wrong time and the wrong person overheard it. And the consequence of that was when Jim wanted to go for a promotion and he was trying to get one so he could move up with the company, Bob stepped in and, said, no, I'm not promoting this person. When he relayed the story of what happened in the break room, he said, I'm not going to support this person's promotion. This is not the kind of behavior that we want to support. And he doesn't, that's not how we want this company represented. Jim didn't lose his job, but he also didn't get a promotion. And just to give you an idea of, the time frame on that, it was 5 years between when Bob overheard that conversation in the break room and Jim was trying to get a promotion. But 5 years later, Bob still remembered the things that Jim had said, and it really affected his brand. So what is your brand? Your brand is how people perceive you. And this is something that you very much have control over. You can control how people perceive you through your actions, through what you say and what you do. And it's not necessarily just about the things that you say. It's also your body language. So there's a great book that was written by Carol Kinsey Goman. She's a PhD in behavioral science. And she wrote a book called The Silent Language of Leaders. And basically what it talks about is it's not just what you say. It's your, how you treat personal space, eye contact, physical hand gestures, facial expressions. All these things can have just as much of an impact, and say just as much as if you don't say anything at all. So if you're talking to someone and you're rolling your eyes, or you're looking at your phone, or when you're speaking to someone and you're grimacing or yawning, all of those things can say just as much as if you're not saying anything at all, or if you are saying something. So physical hand gestures say a lot too. Flipping someone the bird in the workplace isn't very professional, but there's also other hand gestures that can be, taken the wrong way. So you just also have to be thoughtful about that. It's a great book. Like I said, it's available on Amazon. The link will be in my outline, which I'm going to post as well. So branding yourself before someone else brands you is also a really important concept too. So, you want to give people the best you, and if you don't brand yourself, then someone else will brand you for you, and you may not necessarily like what their opinion is of you. And there's a really interesting article that I found in Forbes magazine, and there's a great quote that I found by Eric Stabitz, and this is something that really resonated me about what brands are. So brands are not just what they say they are. Brands are what the consumers say they are. A brand's true identity lies in its perception. So you might think that you're a great employee and that your brand is great, but your coworkers might have a different opinion of that. And one of the ways that you can tell that, obviously, is if you go for a job and you apply and you don't get it. And if you're wondering why, that's a great opportunity for you to meet with your manager and try to get their feedback and, try to understand what you can do to make yourself better and improve your brand. It can be a difficult conversation to have, especially if there's criticisms that are coming forward that you don't necessarily agree or understand with, but it's a great opportunity for you to really improve your brand. So when another job opportunity comes along, you'll have a better chance of getting that job opportunity. So you can control your brand, get manager feedback, all really good stuff. Also, your positivity and the energy that you bring to the workplace really affects your brand. So, I like to treat every day as that I'm on an interview. And it's hard to keep up that level of energy on a day in and day out basis. You don't have to be overly enthusiastic about every day. You don't have to come in and like, this is great. But, staying positive. I mean, if you're, always complaining and, oh, my cat died and my weekend was so bad and it's so hot and I hate this job and I don't understand why they're asking me to do this and I'm so overworked. If you're always complaining, that's going to be people's perception of you. So just try to, be cognizant about that. Positivity is infectious and happiness is infectious. So people want to work with somebody who's, fun to be around. So just think about that. You don't want to be a Debbie Downer or a negative Neil. The other thing that you can do is take charge of your own career development. So own a big mess. So there might be a really difficult conversation or, situation at work that nobody wants to tackle because it's hard. But if you take charge of that and you are able to make an improvement or solve that problem, you're adding value. You're adding value to your brand and you're, essentially saying, I'm a problem solver, and that's really important to managers and owners, is that, they want people around who are going to get the job done and take ownership of it. Tom Peters is a branding guru. He has, done a lot of extensive, written about branding yourself and ways to do that in a good way. And I found a great quote for him that, again, really resonated with me. And it's, if you are going to be a brand, you've got to become relentlessly focused on what you do that adds value and what you're proud of, and most importantly, what you can shamelessly take credit for. So what value are you adding to the job? And take credit for it. I know this is something that, I struggle with as a female in the workplace. A lot of times I'm like, oh, okay, they'll see that I work really hard, but, sometimes you do have to stand up and say, hey, I did that. That's me. I did that. I did a good job, and you need to know that I know that you know. So don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and take credit for your good work. So, to circle back around to, my anecdotal story about Jim and Bob, the obvious solution is, how could have that been prevented? And the obvious answer is, he shouldn't have said what he said, but he did. And it had, slippery slope consequences. And so you just have to be really careful about what you say and what you do. And, just try to be positive. So that's my suggestions to you. I'm going to go ahead and post my outline. So if you're interested in taking a look at that book, The Silent Language of Leaders, it's really great. It's on Amazon. It's a good read. And then also, the Forbes article. And then I'll also post some stuff about Tom Peters. So if you're interested in learning more about branding and perception and how your coworkers see you, there'll be some links on my outline. See ya.